Remember the first time you went swimming? I remember it like it was yesterday, starting off in the shallow end with the thought of drowning crossing my mind. Well, thanks to buoyancy and the help of my mom, I quickly got over that fear. So, let's assume a mom dropping her son off at the pool before she goes to work. Conveniently, the mom happens to be a physics teacher and has two balls with her, a basketball and a bowling ball. To teach her son about the effects of buoyancy, she drops both balls in the pool. As she drops the basketball, you see it hit the surface of the water before taking on an equilibrium stage where less than 50% of it is submerged in the water. The bowling ball, however, after making the initial splash, makes its way down to the pool. This is due to the upward acting buoyant force being weaker than the force of weight acting downward. Why is that, you might ask? Well, we know there are two forces acting in the y direction. The weight pulling the ball downward and the buoyant force pushing the ball upward. Now, as you know by now, weight is equal to the mass of the object multiplied by the gravitational pull. The buoyant force is equal to the density of the fluid multiplied by the gravitational pull multiplied by the volume of the fluid displaced. Now, let's assume the school bully decides to join the party and go swimming. He just ate 2 Ferrero Rocher chocolates and decides to throw his garbage in the pool. On a side note, he clearly doesn't know the term "wanna" isn't really a word, and swimming after eating is not the smartest of ideas. He decides to crumple up the first wrapper and throw the second one in as it is. We know that the weight of both wrappers will be identical due to their equal masses. After the flat wrapper makes its way into the pool, it quickly settles on top of the water without changing much of the original scenario. This is because the buoyant force acting upward is greater than the weight of the wrapper. Recall that buoyant force is the product of density of the fluid, gravitational pull, and the volume of fluid displaced. The volume of fluid displaced by the flat wrapper will be large enough to withstand the weight pulling it down, thus creating an equilibrium scenario where less than 50% of it is submerged. The crumpled up wrapper, however, makes a splash. The buoyant force acting on that will be smaller than that of the other wrapper because it has been rolled up to minimize the volume as much as possible. This way, the volume of the water displaced will be small enough so the weight takes over and pulls the wrapper down. Let's quickly summarize the last scenario. Why does one wrapper float while the other one sinks? Well, we know there's two forces, weight going downward and buoyant force going upward. Both weights are identical. However, the buoyant force acting on the crumpled up wrapper is lesser than the buoyant force acting on the normal wrapper because it displaces a smaller volume of water. So, let's revisit that buoyant force equation. Density of fluid multiplied by gravitational pull multiplied by volume of fluid displaced. Now we know density is mass per unit volume, so let's sub that into the equation. Now we can cancel out the volumes and we're simply left with mass of fluid displaced multiplied by gravitational pull. As you know, that simply equals the weight. This shows us that the deciding factor in buoyant forces is simply the weight of the fluid displaced.